and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 in my Winter Barn series, and in this video we're going to go ahead and add more details to the picture and work on the snow. If you want to follow along with traditional materials, check out part 1 in this series where I have a list of all the paint, brushes, and the canvas that I use. The app that I'm using is Infinite Painter for Android, and I want to go ahead and add another layer to the snow here. And so I want to make the paint mixture a little bit lighter than the color that I have there. So if you're following along with your acrylics, you would take some white acrylic gesso and add some ultramarine blue and maybe just a touch of burnt sienna to sort of gray it down. And as you can see, I'm adding little pockets of light and dark to the snow here. We don't want to cover up all our dark. We want to keep little pockets of dark there so that it shows shadows in the snow, and it shows like there's landscape features underneath, bushes or rocks or little hollows in the ground. And so you want to go ahead and just keep all those little pockets there and kind of make rounded tops on your snow there to just give it the look of new fallen snow there. And then I'm going ahead and using the Schoolhouse chalk brush in Infinite Painter to smooth out the snow and just make it blend in. And if you're following along traditionally with acrylics, you would go ahead and use a number 6 filbert brush, and you can smudge it in with a paper towel or your finger. And then I wanted to add a little bitty fence in the background next to the barn. So I'm using a dark brown color, and if you're following along with acrylics, use burnt umber. And you just want to go ahead and give it the indication of an old fence. So it doesn't have to be real straight looking or anything. In fact, it gives it more character if the posts are sort of crooked and the boards across are uneven, because that just makes it look like an old fence there. And I wanted to add a little bit of snow on the back, so you can go ahead and take your script brush, if you're following along traditionally, and add the snow on top of the fence. And you can use a Leo brush and Infinite Painter and just make it really small. And then you can go ahead and use that same brush for the highlights on the snow on the barn. And we're just doing the barn like we did the snow on the ground. We want to leave pockets of dark and light on there. And use the same light blue snow color for that. We're not ready for the final highlights yet on the snow. And you also want to make sure that you keep the edges of your barn parallel with each other while you're putting on the snow. And you want to drag some of the snow off over the edges of your barn and make little icicles. That's how you make little icicles, is just kind of drag the paint a little bit over the edge of your barn. And that really gives it some character, and it shows that it's really cold and snowy looking. And you can use your script brush for that if you're following along traditionally, or if you're an Infinite Painter, just use your Leo brush on a really small setting. And then you want to go ahead and work a little bit more on the barn and smudge it in, and make sure that you make the snow look soft. We don't want any rough edges with the snow. We want it to look rounded and soft. And so I want to add some trees to the background here just for some interest. And you would probably use a dark brown burnt umber color. If you're following along with your acrylics, burnt umber would work just fine. You want to make jagged branches and make it like the tree's still alive, but it's lost all of its leaves for the winter, of course. And I made 3 trees here. And then later on I cut one of the trees down because I wanted it to look like it was more in the background. But you just go ahead and make some jagged branches here, and you can use your script brush if you're following along with acrylics. And make sure that you pile the snow up against the bottom of the trees to make it look like they're settled down into the snow. You don't want them to look like they're just stuck in there or they're floating or something. So go ahead and bring the snow up a little bit, and you can use that same blue color. And then I want to put a fence in the foreground here too as well. And again, you would use your same burnt umber color if you're following along with acrylics or even oil paints. And you want to go ahead and make them sort of crooked. Again, we don't want them real straight. We want these to look like old fences. And the boards that go across also don't need to be real straight or fancy. Now, you can make them new if you want to, but I just like to put in old fences, and that sort of just gives more character to your painting. And so that's what I've done there. And then I wanted to add a little bit of darker snow to the front of the barn, just to make it like it's a pathway that people are walking towards the barn too. And then add a little bit of some snow on your fence, and do that with you can do that with your script brush if you're following along traditionally, and just kind of smudge it in. We want broken lines because you want to make sure that they can still see the fence. And then I wanted to work a little bit on the barn, the windows and the doors, and make it look like there's some old boards going across the door there, just to give it some character and some old look there. And then I wanted to go ahead and make that middle tree recede more into the background. So I kind of pulled the snow up underneath it and then kind of faded it out. But I left indications of it there. And if you're doing that traditionally, you can just kind of glaze over it with some white mixture of paint. And then I wanted to add some highlights to the snow. And this is some of the final highlights. So you would use a kind of orange tinted white, and that will just make it stand out against the blue. And you don't want to cover up all of your darker colored snow. You just want highlights like the sun is shining on the humps and the lumps of the snow there. So you want to keep those rounded. And put some on your fence too. Make it look like the sun is catching the edge of the snow that's on your fence, and pull it up on the end of the posts there at the bottom because you want them to look like they're set down in the snow. And I'm using the schoolhouse chalk brush to smudge the snow in Infinite Painter here. And then you can use your number 6 filbert if you want to when you're doing your acrylics to kind of give it a softened look. So this is the end of my part 2 winter barn video, and in part 3 we're going to add the final touches to the barn and the final touches to the snow. So if you're interested in catching that, hit the subscribe button. And thanks everybody for watching, and thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.